Ms. Lawrence, what do you do?
Well, right now I'm unemployed, but before that I was in school, and for about a day I had a job working as a server at a bar, but that didn't work out.
What was this? What bar was it?
I was working at Chuggy's. It's the big bar here in Midlands. A lot of the college kids come, and sometimes we have some pretty cool bands playing too.
What day did you work at Chuggy's?
I worked there on September 24th, 2010.
I'd like to talk about that day. When did you get to work?
I got to work at about 3. It was in the afternoon.
What were you doing that afternoon as far as work?
Well, first I had to go through training. It was my first day there, and I was really excited at first. There were already some customers in the bar, though.
Was Mr. Dawson there?
Miss Dawson was sitting at the bar, and she was already drinking, too, even though it was only 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
What did you do the rest of the afternoon?
Well, I was being trained, so I was learning how to work the cash register and how to get people their drinks. I thought it was going to be a really fun job, but by the end of the night, I realized that all the people drinking so much is actually really scary.
Could you see Miss Dawson while you were in training?
Yes, I could see all the glasses coming in front of her and then ending up empty.
When did you get off training?
I got off training at 6:30, and fortunately I had a window before I started working at 7.
Why is that fortunate?
Well, Miss Dawson had already had half a dozen alcoholic drinks and was stumbling all over the place and spilled one of her drinks all over me. I was about to start working on my first day. I was already covered in this alcohol.
What did you do when she spilled her drink on you?
Well, I tried to be polite, and I excused myself and went to my car. Fortunately, I had a change of clothes, and then I came back and started serving around 7.
Was Miss Dawson at your table when you started serving?
Yes, which worried me. She started ordering more drinks, and I was worried that she wouldn't even make it all night.
Who else was at this table?
There were 2 other girls there, Taylor and Vanessa, and they were drinking too.
Is there any way to know what Miss Dawson drank this night?
Well, at the end of the night, she got receipts that she signed. We always make receipts for people, and if they charge with a credit card, then they have to sign.
Would you recognize the receipts from that night if you saw them right now?
Yeah, I've seen them.
You're under permission to approach the witness with Exhibit 2A, which would be all this. Is that good? And then behind it is the other receipt. 2A and 2B. Would you like to see Exhibit 2A and 2B? And then witness Exhibit 2A and 2B. What is Exhibit 2A and 2B?
The top one is the receipt from earlier in the afternoon, and then the second one is the receipt when I started serving Miss Dawson.
And are those true and correct copies of the receipts from that night?
Yes, they are.
Your Honor, I offer Exhibit 2A and 2B into evidence.
Any objections?
Yes, Your Honor, objection to hearsay.
I'm sorry.
Hearsay objection. This is an out-of-court statement.
Were these already stipulated to?
No, Your Honor.
Receipts? No.
But may I respond to the
Yes, you may
hearsay
respond.
objection? If you would look at the bottom, that is Danny Dawson's signature. As such, this is an admission by a party opponent under the rules of evidence. She has adopted a manifest belief in the statement that she purchased these drinks.
I'm going to admit the evidence.
Let me take those from you. Now, what happened whenever they were sitting at their table together?
Well, Miss Dawson started ordering drinks. She started off with a whiskey on the rocks and started ordering shots for the table too. The whole night I was just running back and forth, bringing them more and more drinks.
Now, I'd like to skip to later in the night, closer to whenever they left. What happened later in the night?
Well, I found Miss Dawson standing in the corner of the bar, sort of just staring at the wall. And I was worried. I thought something might be wrong. She was acting really weird. So I asked her if she needed anything. And she said she wanted a tequila sunrise, another drink.
Did you give her a tequila sunrise?
I told her I'd bring her one, but my boss had told me that I needed to be careful for people pushing their limits. And so I asked her if she was driving first.
What did she say?
She said she was fine to drive and that I should bring her the drink, but then moments later she said she'd never felt so tipsy after so few drinks. So I wasn't really sure what to do.
What happened after she said that she'd never felt so tipsy after so few drinks?
Well, I guess that she wasn't driving, so I brought her the tequila sunrise.
Then what happened?
After that, I bought the table sodas. But when I went to go bring her a soda, she asked me if I had any pills.
What kind of pills was she talking about?
She asked if I had any pills to help her concentrate, because she was going to need help focusing on the way home. And then I got really scared because I thought they might investigate me or something. And then I was worried about her driving home and that something might happen and I'd get in trouble.
Did you give her any pills?
No.
What happened after she asked you for it?
Then she and the band all took a shot. And she asked me to bring a shot of water, but everyone else ordered shots of grain alcohol. And all the shot glasses were clear, so I couldn't tell which one was which. And I accidentally gave her the shot of grain alcohol.
Ms. Lawrence, what's grain alcohol?
It's a concentrated alcohol, so like 2 shots of grain alcohol are the same as 1 shot of another alcohol, like vodka or something.
And then what happened after you accidentally gave her this shot of grain alcohol?
Well, I told her I'd given her a shot of grain alcohol and I begged her not to drive home, but she just told me that the grain alcohol would help her focus on the drive home.
Then what happened?
Then she went to go leave right after she had the shot, and I wasn't really sure what to do, and I was trying to think about what to do, and then I realized that I had to stop her, so I ran out into the parking lot to try and beg her more not to drive.
Did she drive?
One of her friends, Taylor, tried to take the keys away, but she just took the keys back and said she was going to make Richard Petty look like he was in the slow lane and got in the car to drive off.
I'll pass the witness.
Good afternoon, Ms. Lawrence. Now, you started your shift at Chevy's about 7 that night, is that right?
That's when I officially started working. I'd been there training all day.
So you started your shift at 7, and then you saw Vanessa and Taylor arrive at about 7 as well.
Yes.
Now, when they got there, Danny ordered a drink for himself and shots for everybody else at the table. Is that right?
Objection, Your Honor. This is hearsay.
Will you do it? You'll have on it.
And this is not hearsay, there's no statement in it.
If Danny Dawson's ordering a drink, he's stating that he would like.
She's getting direct testimony from the witness. I'm gonna hear it. Thank you.
So, did Ms. Dawson order drinks for the table? And
She
for
ordered
herself as well?
She ordered a whiskey on the rocks for herself and ordered all these shots for the table and she kept ordering more and more.
Well, all right. So, the next drink that you saw Ms. Dawson consume, was that a drink on the house from George James sent over by the bartender?
I think so.
To the whole table. And then after that, you served drinks to the table, but you weren't sure who exactly consumed those drinks for you.
I didn't see Miss Dawson drinking the drinks, what kept happening is I was really busy, and so I'd bring the drinks and I'd put them on the table, and I'd like spread them out because they were for the whole table. But then when I would come back, they'd all be empty in front of her.
So that's a yes to my question, and you don't know who's drinking those drinks.
Oh, I'm pretty sure.
So you're pretty sure, but you can't be positive. Yeah.
That's right.
That's right. And the last drink Danny ordered that night was a tequila sunrise, is that right?
Yes,
And after that, she switched to sodas, is that right?
for a little bit.
Okay. So that's 3 drinks then that you know Ms. Dawson consumed
No.
since your shift had started. Excuse me. Since your shift had started.
You're forgetting about the 6 that she had already had earlier.
Since your shift had started at 7, though, Ms. Lawrence, you saw Ms. Dawson consume 3 drinks. Is that right?
With my own eyes, yes.
Now, at the beginning of the night, you had a conversation with your supervisor, Jordan James, right, about looking out for people who were pushing their limits. Isn't that right?
Exactly, yes.
Okay. And throughout the course of the evening, you didn't refuse to serve alcohol to Danny Dawson or anybody at the table, did you?
No, because I didn't think she was going to drive. I know I must.
And you didn't voice any concern or anything to the bartender that night about her getting, or about her drinking so much, pushing her limits?
To the bartender, no, I told Miss Dawson, I told her not to drive, I begged her not to drive, and she wouldn't listen to me.
You saw her leave the bar, though, didn't you? And when she left the bar, you didn't say anything to her, did you?
No, I did, I ran out after her.
But you saw her get in the car, didn't you, with Vanessa and with Taylor, and you didn't say anything?
No, I froze.
We have no redirect. We ask the witness to be allowed to speak.
Your Honor, prosecution calls Sam Lyons to the stand. Good afternoon. Could you please introduce yourself to the jury?
Yes, hi, my name is Samantha Lyons. People call me Samantha.
And Ms. Lyons, what do you do?
I'm a taxi cab driver. I've been one ever since high school. I love the wind in my hair and purr of the engine. My Prius doesn't purr much though.
And Ms. Lyons, how do you know the defendant?
Over the summer, he's one of my frequent flyers. When politely, he's had a huge amount of drink.
Well, now that we know how you know the defendant and you're involved in this case, I want to talk to you about the afternoon of the crash. Where were you?
Well, I went to Chuggy's, which is my usual spot, around 4:30 that day.
And what did you see when you were at Chuggy's?
I saw Miss Dawson. She was sitting there having drinks like always. I saw a couple empty glasses in front of her.
Did you speak to the defendant at this time?
Oh, yeah. I had told her that she could find me later to get a ride.
And did she accept your offer?
No, she didn't. She said that the DD was going to be the DD. I took that to mean that she was going to drive home that day. I thought it was a joke.
Why did you think it was a joke?
Well, at that point, she was already slurring her words because of all the alcohol drink she had.
Objection, Your Honor. Speculation.
Your Honor, this is not speculation. This is based on this witness's rational perception. She said she saw the drinks in front of the defendant and assumed because she'd been drinking that she was slurring.
If I may be heard, Your Honor, opposing counsel just acknowledged it was a speculation, that she assumed the slurred speech was because of the drink she had. Now, Ms. Lyons can testify to her observations, but she can't draw those conclusions for the jury.
I'm going to sustain your judgment if you want.
Motion to strike that answer, Your Honor?
So stricken.
Ms. Lyons, why did you think that the defendant was joking?
Because she was slurring her words.
Now, I want to talk to you a little bit about later on in the bar. You came back to the bar.
Yes, I came back to the bar around 7 o'clock. That was when the band had its opening.
And did you see the defendant again?
Yes, I did. I noticed the defendant when I saw Pat, who's a server, bringing plenty of drinks over to his table. mention Marinette.
And how was the defendant acting at this time?
Still slurring and stumbling.
Did you get a chance to speak with the defendant here?
I did. I thought that at this point, whatever the plans were before, she was going to get a ride in my cab.
What made you think that?
Again, she was slurring her words.
Now, Ms. Lyons, did you see the defendant when she was leaving?
Yes. After I had a couple of cab fares, I went back to Chucky's around 12:40 that night. I asked her if she wanted another ride.
Did she accept your offer this time?
No, she didn't. She said that I drive too slowly.
Ms. Lyons, do you know who drove home that night?
I know that Miss Dawson did. I thought it was going to be Vanessa, but Miss Dawson, wow, she fishtailed out of the parking lot so fast she got mud all over my car.
Pass the witness.
Cross-examination, Your Honor.
Merci.
Good afternoon, Ms. Lyons.
Good afternoon.
I'd like to talk to you a little bit about what you were doing on September 24th. Now, you drive a cab, right?
Yes, I do.
You weren't at the bar that entire night then, were you?
No, I wasn't. I was in and out the whole day.
That's right, you were shuttling cab fares for most of the night, weren't you?
Yes, I was.
And you weren't able to be with Danny Dawson the entire time, of course, were you?
No.
Now, one of those times you left that you mentioned on direct was around 11:20 that evening, right?
Yes.
You're taking a fare in your cab home.
Yes.
You arrived back at the bar at 12:40 in the morning.
Yes.
That's a span of an hour and 20 minutes.
That's correct.
And in that hour and 20 minutes, you can't tell us what Danny Dawson was doing, can you?
No, I wasn't there.
Can't tell us what, if anything, Danny Dawson had to drink in that hour and 20 minutes.
That's true, sir.
But when you did see her, you just told us a moment ago, you had a chance to speak with her, didn't you?
I did.
As you said, you've known Danny for a while now, right?
I have.
You've driven her home before.
I have.
In fact, you've driven her home when you thought she had a few too many, haven't you?
That's very true.
When you spoke to Danny at 12:40 that morning, she didn't look that bad off, did she?
She didn't look that bad off, but she wasn't fit to drive.
I didn't ask you to discuss whether or not she was fit to drive. I asked you about what you saw. And when you talked to her, she didn't look that bad off, did she?
She didn't look bad off, that's true.
Now, you didn't observe Danny Dawson help her two friends into the car, right?
Yes, I did.
And she got behind the wheel.
Yes.
At this point, you didn't try to stop her from driving, did you?
No, I didn't.
You didn't take her keys away?
No, that would be too much for a cab driver like me to do.
Well, as Miss Dawson left, you did nothing. Isn't that right?
Yes, that's true.
All right, thank you, Ms. Lyons. We have nothing further, Your Honor.
No, Your Honor. We simply ask that the witness be allowed to step down.
If I may, Your Honor, before the state calls its next witness, I'd ask that they take down that photograph of Vanessa Sullivan at this time. I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Your Honor. The state calls Officer Ryan Foster to the stand. May I proceed?
You may proceed.
Good afternoon, Officer Foster. Could you tell the jury who you are?
I'm Ryan Foster.
What do you do for a living?
I'm an officer from Midlands PD. I'm also part of Midland Police Department's Fatal Crash Team.
What's the fatal crash team?
Well, whenever we have a really bad auto collision that involves serious injuries or death, the Fatal Crash Team steps in and we take accident reconstructions of the scene. We figure out what exactly happened there.
Well, Officer Foster, why are you in court here today?
I'm here for a couple of reasons. First, I was the first police officer to be at the scene of that accident. I was also the police officer who conducted the Fatal Crash Team's assessment of what exactly happened there that night.
All right, well, before we talk about the defendant's case, I want to give the jury an idea of how you're qualified to do your job. Where'd you go to school?
I went to school at Georgia Tech. I actually have a bachelor's degree in civil engineering.
And Officer Foster, what training have you done with the police academy?
I've taken a number of accident reconstruction courses in seminar form. I've also had 10 years of experience working for Midlands PD, so I do have the background necessary.
Now, Officer Foster, when you reconstruct an accident, what types of things do you look at?
I look at a number of factors in an accident. I look at the vehicles, the indentations on the vehicles, where and what objects have been hit. I look at the road, how the road's designed, what kind of tire marks are on the road, and all those factors, and I use them to make my conclusions.
Did you have enough of that information in the defendant's case to come to your conclusions?
I did.
Now, when you gather all this information, what do you do with it?
Well, I used the laws of physics, and I used formulas given to me by the Windsor and Strasbourg primer. Now, that's an article that details the science of accident reconstruction. I use that article, and I get the formulas from that article in order to get my conclusions, and I take the information I have, and I plug them into the formulas.
And Officer Foster, did you apply the information from the defendant's case into those formulas you told us about reliably?
I did.
Objection. If I may voir dire the witness, I believe that the witness actually does not or was not able to reliably apply those facts and data, facts of this case. And so if I may voir dire the witness, I can show that in fact the witness used an unreliable method, and in fact also the way that he applied that method, there were some problems. And as the judge in today's case, pursuant to case law Davis v. Adams, you must determine that expert testimony is not only relevant, but reliable, and consider the methods that were used in determining that.
May I respond, Your Honor? Under Rule 702, Officer Foster has met the foundation to be an expert. He has the education and the experience and the training. Furthermore, he's told us he had sufficient facts and data, reliable principles and methods, and that he applied those principles and methods reliably to the facts of the defendant's case. Under Rule 702, Officer Foster is qualified to tell us what he learned in this case.
I'm going to allow the testimony. You'll have an opportunity to cross-examine if you have some questions about the credibility.
So, Officer Foster, did you reliably apply those formulas you told us about to the defendant's case?
I did.
All right, well, what's the first thing you do when you reconstruct an accident?
Well, what I do is I make a diagram of the accident scene and basically the road where it happened.
Did you make a diagram in this case?
I did.
Would you recognize that diagram if I showed it to you, Officer
I
Foster?
definitely would.
Showing opposing counsel, Prosecution's 11. Your Honor, would you like a copy? May I approach the bench? Officer Foster, I'm handing you Prosecution's 11. Can you go ahead and tell us what that is?
It is the diagram I made of the accident scene.
And is that a fair and accurate representation of the accident as it happened?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, we'd like to offer Prosecution's 11 into evidence.
Do you have any objections?
No objection.
Okay, so
Your Honor, can we go ahead and use an enlargement of this and have Officer Foster step off the stand and walk us through this accident?
do you have any objections?
I have no objections to that, Your Honor.
All right, Officer Foster, as soon as we get this easel set up, have you step off the stand. Apologize, Your Honor, this is a previous easel removal. There we go. All right, Officer Foster, why don't you come down here? I'm going to go ahead and hand you this car. I want you to go ahead and walk us through.
Permission to reposition myself so that I may also see.
You may.
Officer Foster, can you go ahead and tell the jury, first of all, what we're looking at here?
Well, this is a map of the accident scenes on Canyon Road where the accident happened.
All right, can you go ahead and walk us through, I'll go ahead and switch places with you. Can you go ahead and walk us through what happened when the defendant was driving that night?
Sure. The car's going northbound on Canyon Road here. When it suddenly swerves off the road, right here where the ruts are.
And Officer Foster, how fast was the defendant going when she left the roadway right back here?
The defendant was going 66 miles an hour at the time.
Objection, Your Honor. Improper opinion. Although the witness has testified as to some methodology used, we have not seen the specific methodology used in calculating the exit speed of the vehicle, and I believe further foundation must be laid before the witness can testify as to that opinion.
Your Honor, under Rule 702, Officer Foster has been qualified as an expert in accident reconstruction. Under Rule 703, we don't have to go into all of his underlying facts and data and how we got to his conclusions in order to talk about his conclusions.
If I may respond, accident reconstruction is not limited just to calculating speed. If I'm correct, that also involves physics and other calculations, and I would like some clarification that his background does, in fact, include that type of background and those qualifications.
Can you guys see foundation?
Yes, Your Honor. So, Officer Foster, you mentioned that you used an article when you come to your conclusions today.
Yes, it's called the Windsor and Strasbourg article.
And how did you figure out how fast the defendant was going when she left the roadway?
Well, the article gives me a number of formulas, a combined speed formula, and I used that based on the indentation in the car. So I knew the force at which the car struck the objects. I used the indentation to calculate the force at which it struck the objects, and other factors including friction in the road and other surfaces the car was on in order to calculate the speed of the car. So this is based on perfect mathematical certainty.
So, Officer Foster, how fast was the defendant going when she left the roadway?
He was going at 60. She was going at 66 miles an hour.
And what's the speed limit on this section of Kingman Road?
The speed limit on this section is 35 miles an hour.
All right, so when the defendant was traveling 66 in a 35-mile-per-hour zone, you say she left the roadway?
That's right.
What happened next?
Well, she's off the roadway right about here. And as you see, there's this line kind of traces it out. She tries to get back on the road, and she succeeds. However, she's not able to maintain control after she gets back on the road. She loses control, hydroplanes, and she ends up hitting a utility pole and a tree at this point right here.
All right, thank you, Officer Foster. Go ahead, you can have your seat. Now, Officer Foster, when did you get to the scene of the crime?
I got to the scene shortly after the collision happened.
And what did you see when you got there?
Well, when I got there, I saw the car. It hit a utility pole and a tree. So I saw the car. It seemed extremely damaged. I checked on the people in the car. When I first got there, I saw Mr. Dawson, or Miss Dawson, outside the car. I saw him standing next to Miss Bennett. She's one of the ladies who lives near the area. When I looked to see who was inside the car, I heard screaming, and there was Miss Hobson in the back of the car, and she had blood all over her. And in the front passenger seat, I saw Vanessa Sullivan. She was unresponsive.
Did you speak to the defendant when you got to the scene?
Yes, I did. She was mumbling some stuff. She said something about needing another drink.
Officer Foster, when the defendant told you that she needed another drink, what did you do?
Well, that's when I realized that the collision might have been a result of her driving under the influence. At that point, I decided it would be appropriate for me to conduct some field sobriety tests on her.
What's a field sobriety test?
Well, when I'm in the field, I don't have a machine that gives me their blood alcohol concentration of the subject. In order to figure out if they're intoxicated or not, I have to conduct some tests that are based on their biological action. That's what field sobriety tests are.
How many field sobriety tests did you run on the defendant?
I ran a total of 4 at the scene.
All right, well, what was the first one?
Well, the first one was pretty simple. I had her try to say the ABCs backwards.
Could she say her ABCs backwards?
She could not.
Okay, well, what about the second test?
On the second test, what I had her do was what's called a horizontal gaze nystagmus test.
Officer Foster, what is a horizontal gaze nystagmus test?
Well, it's one of the most reliable tests that we have to establish whether or not somebody is under the influence. When you are intoxicated, your eyes cannot properly track moving objects. They actually jerk instead of moving fluidly. So what I do is I take a flashlight out and shine it in somebody's eye so I have a really clear look there. And then I take a pen or my finger and I kind of slide it in front of their eyes and have their eyeballs follow my finger. If they jerk, I know they are under the influence. If they move smoothly, they're sober.
And what did the defendant's eyes do when you performed this test?
The defendant's eyes jerked noticeably.
Now, you mentioned that you gave the defendant 4 field sobriety tests. How did she do on the other 2?
She failed both of the other 2.
After the defendant failed 4 field sobriety tests, what did you do?
That's when I decided I should probably take her to the police station and have her administered an actual breath alcohol concentration test that would determine conclusively if she was under the influence.
And Officer Foster, what did you tell the defendant about these field sobriety, or excuse me, about this breathalyzer test?
Well, I informed her of her rights, and if she did refuse to take this test, that evidence could be used against her.
Well, what were the results of the defendant's breathalyzer test?
I don't know. The defendant refused to take that test.
Thank you, Officer Foster. Pass the witness, Your Honor.
Yes. Officer Foster, you said on direct examination that you relied on the Windsor and Strasburg primer in forming your conclusions today, correct?
I did.
And you're aware that they discussed the method of using a drag sled in that primer, right?
Yes, I am.
And you used the drag sled in part of your calculations in determining how fast Ms. Dawson was traveling when she exited the roadway.
I did.
And although you refer to that as a reliable method, you are aware that, in fact, it is of much controversy in your scientific profession to use that method.
I am aware. It's a lot like the compass in the 1600s.
So that's a yes to my question. There's controversy.
Your Honor, I ask that counsel allow the witness to answer the questions.
I believe my question was simply, is there controversy? I may take all day to discuss the controversy.
It's an accident. The overrule continues with us.
And you're also aware that it has never been conclusively proven that using a drag sled actually produces a valid result.
It has not been proven or disproven. It's not like the compass in the 1600s. Sailors used it to go north. They didn't know why it worked. There were no studies to prove it, but it worked.
I understand. And you relied upon this drag sled method. That was one of the methods you used in calculating the speed. Now, you used some calculations. You also said on direct examination.
That's right. I used formulas.
And there were several formulas at your disposal to use. There was a combined speed formula that you mentioned.
That's right.
And there was a speed energy loss formula that you had to employ as well, wasn't there?
That's right.
And in fact, there are 2 forms of a speed loss equation, aren't there?
There are.
And you'd agree with me that the determining factor in which equation to use is the surface of impact.
It's the size of the surface of it.
Well, to be clear, the only thing that is mentioned in the primer is that narrow objects are used for one equation and not the other. Isn't that true?
Yeah, it's the size.
And isn't it also true that the tree was more narrow than the side of the car that it impacted, or the car, when it impacted the tree, that tree was more narrow than the side of the car, wasn't it?
Can you repeat your question? I'm not understanding.
When the side of the car hit the tree, that tree was more narrow than the side of the car in diameter, wasn't it? Well, should I refresh your memory?
No. I can't picture the question you're asking me.
You measured the side of the car. You measured the diameter of the tree, didn't you?
Yeah.
And it was a critical calculation in coming to your conclusion today that you know exactly the size of that measurement and what that meant for the speed of the car, right?
Yeah, that's right. So you're asking me to compare the two.
Well, yes. You know that the diameter that you measured is less than the length of the car.
Oh, yes, that's right. The tree is smaller than the car.
Right, it is more narrow.
Yes, but the tree itself is not a narrow object, but it is narrower than a car.
I'm not asking you about a definition in your opinion about what a narrow object is. I would just like to clarify that the tree is in fact more narrow than the side of the car.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And isn't it also true that the example of a narrow object that was given in the primer is an object that is about 2 feet wide?
Yeah, that's right.
And if you had used the equation, the modified equation that you used when an object strikes a narrow object, then the speed of Miss Dawson's car when she left the roadway, it would have been slower, wouldn't it?
If I had used a narrow formula, it would have been slower.
Another area where you used not the narrow formula but the alternative was with the impact of the utility pole. And you didn't even measure the width of the utility pole, did you?
I didn't need to.
You didn't need to, however, it is what determines which equation you use.
Well,
Just as in the collision with the tree.
May I explain?
I'm simply asking if you measured the width of the utility pole.
I didn't need to.
Okay. And now I'd like to steer your attention away from these calculations of the speed. And I'd like to talk to you about the sobriety test that you performed. Now, you performed these tests on Miss Dawson right and following the collision.
Yeah, I did the test on Miss Dawson.
They performed minutes after the crash.
I did it a few minutes after the crash.
And you and Miss Dawson are the only people present during those tests.
No, I do not believe so. It was at the accident scene.
Well, notably, you would say so at least, the mother of the victim was at the scene during those tests, wasn't she?
Yeah, her daughter had just died, so she rushed to the scene of the accident.
But you would agree with me that her presence was something that you were worried would make the defendant nervous.
That's right. I asked her to kind of move away from the scene.
But she didn't, did she?
Oh, she ignored me. I had to. She did ignore me.
She ignored you, and she was screaming, wasn't she?
Oh yeah, her daughter had just died. She was understandably pretty upset.
Still, she was present at Miss Dawson's sobriety tests, and you continued to perform them.
Well, for most of the tests, I don't think that would be an issue.
Even though you did concede that you were worried it might make her nervous, isn't that right?
That was a possibility.
Well, finally, I'd just like to go take you all the way back to the beginning of that night. You were on patrol in front of Canyon Road that night, weren't you?
I was, in fact, on Canyon Road.
Right, and you were stationed there with the express purpose of watching incoming cars that were driving unsafely coming in from the city towards Canyon Road.
That's right.
And that night, you saw Miss Dawson drive past you, didn't you?
Well, I didn't know it was Miss Dawson at the time. I just saw a car drive past.
What you later learned to be Miss Dawson driving past you. Well, Miss Dawson, she drove past you earlier that evening.
I mean, I didn't know it at the time, but
Right.
the car involved.
Right. And, yes, exactly. And then you clocked her speed at that moment?
I did. I used my radar.
And you clocked her going 54 miles per hour?
Yes,
That's speeding in that area, isn't it?
it is.
And you did not pull Miss Dawson over.
I did not.
You knew that she was heading towards Canyon Road, didn't you?
She was already on Canyon Road. So
Right. And you made the decision not to pull her over.
I didn't believe her driving was dangerous at that point.
No further questions?
Yes, Your Honor. Officer Foster, I want to give you a chance to explain something that the opposing counsel didn't let you talk about. When do you use a wide object formula and when do you use a narrow object formula?
Well, I use it when the situation merits that. Once again, there was that 2 feet number given. Well, the tree was already larger than 2 feet. I measured it to a circumference of 30, or diameter of about 30. So 30 inches, and that's greater than 24 inches, which is 2 feet. So at that point, regardless of the utility pole size, the size of the object hit by the car, which is a tree, and utility pole, were greater than 2 feet. I never had to measure that utility pole.
So Officer Foster, based on the objects that the defendant hit with the car, what formula should you have used?
The wide object formula. That's what I did use.
All right, and now, opposing counsel talked a little bit about how Vanessa Sullivan's mother was at the scene when performing these field sobriety tests. Are these field sobriety tests affected by any external factors?
Not really, especially the horizontal gaze and establishment. That one is independent of any external factors. It's purely a biological test, and no external factors can affect it. So that really wasn't a big concern in my mind.
And how did the defendant do on that HDN test?
Oh, her eyes were jerking, so she failed.
Pass the witness, Your Honor. And recall?
No recross, Your Honor.
We ask Officer Foster to be allowed to step down. You may be excused. And with that, Your Honor, the people of Midlands rests its case in chief, and we request a brief recess before the defense's case in chief. Okay?
10 minutes be all right, Your Honor?
10 minutes will be fine, thank you. Your excuse.